Welcome to the last of the 4 modules, as we consider the environmental and ecological impacts related to development of our landscapes in pursuit of renewable energy. It provides insight not only into Wales but other global impacts on the planet. As I step through the topics associated with this module, I will look to push the boundaries beyond the obvious to also touch on matters such as manpower and ethics. We don't naturally think about these, and as they are not really in mainstream media, they don't naturally come to mind, but are important. Most people agree that renewable energy generation is a good thing, and if you look at general polls, around 80% of the population think we should have wind generation. Technological change is pretty much inevitable, but we must always be mindful of any change, and change should never just come at any costs because some just think it is a good idea. Developers often play on the 80% statistic, but never put this into context. Whilst this might be a consensus, this needs to be tempered with the fact that such developments can't just be put anywhere. It is no good implementing renewables and saying, look, we are saving the planet because we are removing CO2 gases, when we are just destroying it in other ways. It is clear we need to strike the right balance as global habitats and precious resources are diminishing every day at present. Mankind is damaging the environment and using resources at a rate that is just not sustainable. It is essential to protect our woodlands and forests, just as it is important to save the Amazon rainforest. First and foremost, as consumers of electricity, it is essential that we don't lose focus on what is important to us, rather than elected bodies and developers getting what's important to them. At the end of the day, the consumer is paying the bill. Ideally, we need to be sure that when we switch on the power, it is there 24 hours a day, 365 days of the year. There may be network faults from time to time, and that is inevitable. Loss of power because the generation and supply system is not designed properly is not acceptable. Wind turbine technology is good, but in the wrong place it isn't. It is no good if the wind doesn't blow, and brings us back to the point we need a balanced portfolio of electricity supply solutions. Cost or more to the point, the price of electricity we pay for needs to be the best it can be. The cost of living is already causing distress to many. But we can't just trade things off against the environment, thinking about ecology and the environment alone. Just being able to go out and enjoy the great outdoors is good for our well-being. Enjoying the great outdoors is pretty much free. So, proper balance is needed, with a joined-up, or as they say, holistic plan, that considers and addresses all the factors correctly. It cannot just be a free-for-all, as this is a surefire way to reduce reliability, increase cost, and ruin the environment we are looking to save. Yes, it is easier said than done, but easiest and cheapest for the supplier isn't best for the consumers and communities. Renewable energy supply is promoted as though it is just magically green. It is intimated that there are no CO2 emissions associated with it. This is just not true. Just think about the thousands and thousands of tons of steel, concrete, and precious metals that are needed. Pylons are ecologically damaging through the sheer number of them. Green Gen has chosen a 27-meter high variety for its route design, placed at roughly 250-meter intervals over almost 100 kilometers. We can all do the maths. But ecologically, individual turbines are even worse. Radnor Forest is one of Mid Wales's most precious upland habitats, over which Green Gen is planning to place 36 of them, each potentially up to 250 meters high. Into this earth will be piled thousands of tons of reinforced concrete, which will form the foundations of these giant turbines. Given the sheer height and mass of these machines, you can imagine how deep these foundations will have to go. Concrete pylon and turbine foundations does not only displace the water, the peat, the insects, the organisms, and everything else in the ground, it will also leach out toxins for many years to come. There will be no plans to remove these massive subterranean blocks at the end of the life of the infrastructure. They will remain in the ground forever. Birds in Radnor Forest include the disappearing curlew as well as several species of raptor. Ground nesting sites will be obliterated in the construction phase. There are also several varieties of bat, which should be carefully protected, as well as many other protected species along the proposed pylon route. It is essential to consider often forgotten transportation issues. The massive turbine parts and blades will be imported at Swansea and delivered to Radnor Forest by lorry. This will necessitate several new road building projects, again in highly sensitive areas. There will be a new bridge built over the River Wye. There'll be new parking areas either side of it so they can switch the blades to and from a different vehicle to get it over the bridge. This bridge goes straight over one of the Wye's most important salmon pools. Even local access for constructing pylons needs multiple trackways across fields to get materials to sites. Let's explore the misnomer that leads people to believe that wind turbines are carbon-free. It is certainly true that wind blows without CO2 emissions. Isn't nature a wonderful thing? The reality though is that capturing the wind produces lots and lots of CO2 gas emissions. The steel industry burns tons of coal for steel production for wind turbines and pylons. Add to this that raw materials for this process are dug up and shipped across the globe and you have lots of CO2 emissions. The numbers get quite large, very quickly. These emissions barely get a mention. As a result of this and the way this industry sector is promoted, people end up conditioned or greenwashed into thinking it's carbon-free. No, it just produces less CO2 gas emissions over its lifespan. The massive turbine blades are predominantly glass or carbon fiber and the majority of these go to landfill as they are not recyclable. These blades literally get eroded by the weather and wear out and must be replaced. The fragments or fibers that are continuously coming off the blades find their way into the ecological systems, as they fall to the ground at wind farm locations. It is worth reiterating the concrete foundations have a truly massive impact on ecology, and not to forget the mineral extraction for metals causes huge damage, and I will come on to this a little later. Now here's an interesting fact that you are almost certainly not aware of. Nuclear generation produces the least number of emissions per kilowatt-hour. It is the greenest of the lot. So, having shared with you that wind farms are not free from carbon emissions, let's revisit the term net zero. Renewables, whether wind or solar, have a lower carbon footprint, or to put it another way, produce less CO2 gas emissions than coal or gas, but they do still have associated emissions. The remaining offset to get to a 0 point is either through inorganic means, where carbon gases are captured and stored in say empty gas fields or mines, or via organic means, where say trees are planted as these naturally absorb carbon. Aha, you might say, but wind turbines really don't emit gases directly when operating. The offset is actually achieved through a carbon credit from other industries. There is a carbon trading market, but this is definitely a complex topic for another time. The organic approach is poignant given Wales cut down 2 to 3 million trees for wind farms prior to 2020, and any mid-Wales developments will require the removal of thousands and thousands more trees. The Welsh government has stated it is looking to plant 86 million trees by 2030. A very tall order given it looks like trees are being removed faster than they are being planted. So I have shared lots of terms that you may or may not have come across before, but let's just take stock for a few moments with some context about what change potentially looks like in terms of power generation and growth, with a focus on the end target date of 2050. This chart is shared by a company that is focused on developing offshore wind farms, and numbers are UK numbers. The position in 2023 hasn't really changed that much from the position of 2017. Gas is the dominant source of generation and renewables still has a long way to go to overtake it. By 2050 the vision is that we will have an electric-centric energy model, powering everything from cars to domestic heating. By then electricity demand will have doubled. In order to serve this demand we will need both additional power generation, and the power networks will need significant reinforcement or upgrade to carry all this extra power. Most of the energy networks in Wales are at capacity in terms of local distribution. 80% of the population recognises the need for renewables, and supports it up until the point they truly understand the impact on their lives. There are solutions that are far less impactful than delivering onshore, but this needs to be managed in a considerate way. For Wales, offshore alone will meet more than twice its future needs, and Wales needs to be mindful of what a reasonable commitment to the wider UK should be. It is important not to industrialise the landscape, because that is the path of least resistance or challenge. When you look at the 2050 generation stack, it is clearly dominated by renewables, but other forms of generation are important. It is interesting that the percentage wind offshore is lower than wind onshore. This doesn't need to be the case. I'm sure the offshore company that created this chart would be happy to do more. The electricity supply industry faces a recruitment challenge of a magnitude that it has never seen before. There is a bit of a perfect storm brewing, in that much of the existing workforce is reaching retirement age. All the latent manpower capacity has been stripped out of the electricity industry over the past 2 to 3 decades. Add to this that the energy sector is not attractive to students, and you find there is nowhere near enough expertise coming through to meet demand in delivering at the build rate that is deemed necessary for 2050 emissions targets. The spectrum of roles is wide, everything from designers and scientists through to ecologists. One of the challenges is that even if you are a graduate entrant to the industry, it takes many years of experience to be able to think broadly enough to propose and create coherent and efficient power network solutions. It is of interest that many engineering resources have moved across from the oil and gas industry, as engineering skills are very similar when building wind turbines, with the exception of course of the electrical element. This resource pool is drying up, and it is important to remember that it is not just the UK that is looking for these resources, it is a global challenge. These resources challenges are one of the reasons that many of the UK major energy initiatives such as smart meters and electric vehicle charging points are running so late. This leads us neatly back into other labour concerns and wider environmental damage beyond our backyard, so to speak. China dominates the processing and refining of lithium, cobalt, copper, manganese, nickel, zinc, chromium, aluminium and rare earth elements, and also the manufacturing of technologies like solar panels, wind turbines and batteries for electric vehicles, which require so-called transition minerals. The Business and Human Rights Resource Center, a corporate watchdog that tracks the local impact of thousands of global businesses, identified 102 alleged abuses in 2021 and 2022 alone, linked to Chinese mining interests spanning 18 countries. It is not uncommon to find underage workers operating in harmful and dangerous conditions in pursuit of obtaining precious minerals. Environmental and ecological damage prevails on a monumental scale overseas, but scarcely gets a mention. It can displace communities, contaminate drinking water, hurt workers, and destroy pristine environments. It pollutes water and land with mercury and cyanide, endangering the health of people and ecosystems. These two are broader considerations in deployment of renewable technologies and part of the decision-making process in considering, are we saving the planet or destroying it? In many respects it is a painful decision-making process. We can't just sit on our hands, but what we can do is ensure we only build what is really needed and can be used. There is a painful tale that is Hendy Wind Farm. There sit a number of 110-meter turbines. During a protracted legal process over planning permission, one of the inspectors, in turning down the Hendy Wind Farm application, stated, the combined harm to landscape and heritage matters significantly outweigh the identified benefits. But to no avail. The then relevant Minister Leslie Griffiths cast aside the views of the planning inspectors who'd refused it, and unilaterally granted permission under development of national significance. It has been suggested that this facility is still not operational and not connected to the grid. On the basis the point in question is true, just think how much environmental damage been enacted for no benefit. Well, I am coming to the end of the 4th module, and I hope that you have found time to watch them all. My aim was to provide insight, in order that you can formulate your own opinion in supporting and driving the best approach as part of our wider, or even extended Valley community. The list presented here is a final reminder of some of the key points I have made as we have undertaken the learning journey through these modules. If you haven't already done so, why not join your local Facebook group or look at the website for up-to-date news and views. Go to the website at nopylons.wales. There are lots of insights and a user-friendly set of route maps for your information. Alternatively, if you want to go directly to the maps, just put in your web browser nopylons.wales/mapindex.html. I will repeat that again, nopylons.wales/mapindex.html. I will look to provide further updates via this medium as things move forward if people confirm and advise this is helpful. Bye for now.